just have an on or off. Does the password need to be complex or can it be simple? And what they mean by complex is it needs to have these particular requirements. So it needs to be 6 characters in length, contain characters from 3 of these four categories. It's got to have uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. So it is a good idea to leave this enabled. That greatly enhances the security in your network. You definitely don't want somebody being able to guess or brute force their way in, so we'll leave that on. The last option is whether or not the passwords for users are stored on the domain controller using a method of encryption that's reversible. And what that means is when a password is set on a user, that is stored in such a way that the password cannot be decrypted very easily. And so we want to keep that disabled. We want to make sure that our passwords aren't easy to get to. So that's it for the password policy. Let's go to the next one, account lockout policy. That's just below that. So account lockout duration. Now what this is how long is the user locked out if they get their password incorrect so many times. So we're going to define this. If we check the box, and now normally it's undefined, and what that means is that the policy is simply turned off. So we'll go ahead and define this policy, and let's say we'll lock them out for 30 minutes. That sounds fine. Now it's going to give us a warning. These other two need to be enabled and configured in order for that policy we just changed to be changed successfully. So it's going to put some defaults in there. We'll go ahead and change those after the fact. So we'll apply that, hit OK. Account lockout threshold. How many times does the user enter their password incorrectly before it locks them out? 5, that sounds just fine. And reset account lockout after how many minutes? So they'll get locked out for 30 minutes, and after that 30 minutes is up, the account will be re-unlocked, so to speak. We'll leave that enabled, that's fine. So that's it for our 2 most common policies, and we're applying this again to a computer configuration, and since it's directly underneath our domain, it's not in any OUs, it's going to get applied to all of the computers within that domain. But we need to make sure first that our scope is applied correctly. So we're going to close this, and next we're going to click the Scope tab. Now, in our default domain policy, you'll see that it's applying to this domain, test.local, and it's filtered to these objects. And the object that it's filtering to is authenticated users. Now, it may be confusing. We've got a policy that's being applied to the entire domain, but there's only computer policies in it, yet we're filtering it down to authenticated users. It really doesn't matter if you're applying a policy to users or computers. You generally want to only apply it to user objects when you're talking about security filtering. So the fact that this says authenticated users, that's perfect. We want that to always be the users that we want to apply that policy to, because when that user logs in, that computer policy will apply to that particular computer as long as it is a computer within the domain, since we've applied this policy here. So what I'd like to do next is create a policy for the financial folks that work at the headquarters at our imaginary car dealership. Now, the financial people are probably working on important accounting stuff, and they probably have some sensitive information on their computers. And we want to make sure that their computers lock if they get up and walk away for a certain amount of time. That's so that nobody can just walk up and start messing around and look at things that they shouldn't see. So we're going to create a policy in the headquarters OU. We'll go ahead and click that, and then right-click and click Create a GPO in this domain and link it here. We're going to name this GPO, so we're going to say Screen Timeout. And now you'll see that that GPO is applied. If we expand headquarters, we'll see that that's been applied. And by default, it automatically puts our authenticated users, and that's fine. So we're going to go ahead and edit this policy and right-click it. Click Edit. So we're going to set up an inactivity lock. After the machine is inactive for so much time, the computer will automatically lock. This policy is located under Computer Configuration, Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Local Policies, and then Security Options. So the policy we're looking for is under Interactive Logon and it's called Machine Inactivity Limit. We're going to double click that. We're going to check the box to define the setting, and we'll set that to something like 5 minutes. Look, notice that it's asking for it in seconds. Again, we can always click explain if we want to get a definition of that policy. So now once we click apply and click OK, you'll see that the policy's been defined. It's been set at 300 seconds. And if we exit the group policy editor and then click settings for this group policy, we'll see that the interactive logon policy has been set to 300 seconds. So now when a computer is within the headquarters OU and a user logs onto it, once that computer has been inactive for 300 seconds or 5 minutes, that computer will automatically go to the screensaver and then lock. So when that user comes back, they'll need to sign back in order to unlock the computer. Now we need to make sure that this policy is applying to the particular users we want it to apply to. Right now we've got this group policy object, or GPO, in the headquarters OU. So we know that it's only going to apply to things that are in that headquarters OU. So we know that we've got the location right. But now we're going to go to scope, and we'll see that security filtering is set to authenticated users. And what that means is users that have been authenticated and logged onto the computer in the domain network. But we don't want to just apply this to authenticated users to all of them. We want to apply it to only the financial folks. So if we go back into Active Directory, and again we can go to Server Manager, Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers, and if we go to the headquarters, we'll see that we set up a accounting group. Now when we're creating this group policy, when we're setting up filtering, we can apply it to groups, users, and computers. So perfect, we have a group that applies to this particular GPO that we want to push this GPO out to. So we'll click remove on authenticated users, and we'll click add, and then we'll type our accounting group. We'll see it underlined, so it found it, hit OK. And so now we've got that group set up. This GPO will apply to users that are in the accounting group as long as those members are in the headquarters OU. So we've successfully set up our GPO. It's going to apply to our users that we want to apply it to. So that's the basics of setting up a group policy object. And again, when we're setting up group policy, keep in mind that there are literally thousands of policies that we could set up for computers, for users. We can set up scripts that run when the user starts the computer or logs on or logs off. There are many, many options in terms of setting up the computers in your network the way that you want through group policy. A really good resource to use is TechNet's website, and I've included a link within the lecture resources that will take you to basically a list of all of the group policies and what they do. Of course, you can always use that tool within group policy to get an explanation, but TechNet is a really good resource to look at some of the more common group policy objects and what's common practice in terms of keeping your domain secure, as well as the workstations and user accounts within your domain. Next, we're going to go over file sharing and permissions, and from there we'll move on to print services. Next, we're going to quickly go over print services, which allows you to share network printers with users and deploy them in a way where they don't need to add a printer individually onto their computer. The basics of it is that you set up a printer within your network and you set up Windows Server to be a print server, and that provides the drivers and the print queue on the server to be available for users to use. So first we need to install that role. So we go back to Add Roles and Features, and this is a role installation. So we'll go to Server Roles and we'll select Print and Document Services. We'll check that. It lets us know that it's also going to install the administration tools for that role. So we'll click Add Features. It gives us a little overview of print and document services and what that does. And there's also some other features that come along with that. We can do a distributed scan, we can do internet printing, LPD. Right now we're just going to do a basic print server. We'll go ahead and click install, and the installation will start. Once the installation is finished, we can click close, and you'll see that the print services role has been installed. So now to access the tool for print management, we can go up to Tools and scroll down to Print Management.